Welcome to the PopHeadz Podcast episode 5. This is your host, Eric, aka Ghost Rider. In today's episode, I'm actually going to be talking about legal stuff as it relates to our project and NFTs in general. Maybe you're expecting me to talk about NAV or the NAV operating model, but actually I'm not going to. I'm going to talk about why in this episode. If you haven't seen it yet, we proposed a way of running an NFT project called the NAV operating model. Originally, I had planned this episode to go over that, but there is a more important topic that I have to talk about, which is getting all of our legal stuff in place. I think first thing I want to say out of the gate, PopHeadz as a project and the team as a whole plan on doing things above board. Obviously, there is no clear regulation related to NFTs at this time, but one thing we are trying to avoid is getting our NFTs labeled as a security. If you don't know, there is something called the Howie Test that is used to determine whether or not something is a security. In 1946, there was a Supreme Court case, SEC versus Howie, and they were determining whether or not a leaseback agreement was legally an investment contract, which is a security. Here's what happened. There were two companies. Number one, W.J. Howie Co., and number two, Howie in the Hills Service Incorporated. Now, W.J. Howie Company was a company that owned and sold citrus groves in Florida. And Howie in the Hills was a service company that managed the operations of growing citrus. So they kind of separated out the land ownership into one company and the operations into another company. Now, W.J. Howie Company sold real estate contracts to the public. This was to finance development, but here's the thing. As a business person, you're thinking, okay, I sold the land. Can I at least use my other company, Howie in the Hills, to operate the land? Technically, the people who bought the land could operate the citrus farm themselves or hire any other third party to do so. But when they bought the land, they marketed Howie in the Hills as the superior service provider. So as the landowner, you could sign basically a leaseback agreement to Howie in the Hills. Essentially, Howie in the Hills would have full and complete possession of the land, tend to it, grow citrus, harvest, and market the produce. You, as the owner, would be given a percentage of the profits. Now, the SEC steps in and says, hey, the leaseback agreement is an investment contract. Therefore, it is a security, and filed a suit against Howie. It goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and they create something called the Howie Test, which is a set of questions to determine whether or not something is or is not a security. So the Howie Test is a series of questions to determine if a transaction is an investment contract. And the 4 questions are, number 1, is it an investment of money? Number 2, is there an expectation of profits from the investment? Number 3, is the investment of money in a common enterprise? Number 4, do any profits come from the efforts of a promoter or a third party? If what you're selling is yes on all of them, it's probably a security. The thing is, so many NFTs sound like a security under the Howie Test. Common sense will tell you that some NFTs are very, very likely a security, and those are the ones with direct profit or revenue sharing, or have some kind of staking Ponzi-nomics or ownership equity in something. I mean, we have common sense that we know that NFTs are just freaking JPEGs, right? And people are just gambling on them. But PopHeadz does want to be on the right side in case regulators come in and turn off the casino that is NFT flipping. I'm going to start here and say that the NAV concept that we proposed I think is pretty unique in that profit sharing is not directly passed to the holder, and it allows us to not have a Ponzi-nomics token. That being said, we cannot market the NFT like it's a financial asset. If people want to trade and speculate, that is fine, they can do that. But we do have to be smart and safe with how we go about things while regulations are still unclear. The PopHeadz team is talking with lawyers and CPAs to work through doing all of this as best we can before the mint. And we have every intention on incorporating a legal entity, or LLC, before the mint, and have all of our eggs in order. To that end, that does limit what we can do or say. And maybe that's bearish, I'm sorry. But we're still going to do it. So with regards to our NAV financial operating model, I will have to backtrack a little bit and say that I still want to implement it, but we will probably have to pause it until we have the right legal structures for it. It is very likely that we will take that NAV concept and turn it into its own thing that is separate from PopHeadz the brand. So it instead will act as a third-party service that does custody and financial services for NFT projects like PopHeadz. It will probably have to wait until later, after mint, but fundamentally we cannot and will not market the NFT as a financial asset, even if that is what y'all are planning to use it for. Now, how is all of this legal stuff affecting our project and roadmap? That is an important question. I mean, after researching into all of this, I can say that not enough projects take this very seriously. I mean, we all know the majority of projects are rugs and they don't care about this stuff because they only care about money and had no intentions of complying with regulations anyways. And you can take the other side, which is like, bro, they're not, it's going to take so long to regulate, just do whatever you want for now. I think, I mean, that's one way to approach it, but I think we do have to, you know, if we want to be in the space for a long time, we do have to do things right. I think the only exception is if the project is based in like the Cayman Islands or whatever, where crypto regulations are incredibly friendly to you. But what I'm saying is, if you want to be here for a long time, it is important to do things the right way, even if it affects the project negatively in the short term. As long as it doesn't kill the project, then we should be doing it if it's good in the long term. One practical piece of advice I'd like to give out is if you're an NFT trader, investor, or even someone who sells NFTs as a project owner or even a one-of-one artist, I would highly recommend setting up an LLC and doing all your activity through that. You will get the tax benefits of being able to expense things and have your personal assets be legally protected in case you get sued for some reason. And I mean this, even for one-of-one artists, especially for one-of-one artists, actually. Set up the LLC and then sell your NFTs through that. If you are into NFTs to make money and plan on holding a lot for a long time, I would factor in regulatory risk in your expected risk return premium. What that means is, depending on the NFT project you're quote unquote holding, there is a risk spectrum of whether or not it is legal or probably illegal. It is up to you yourselves to determine if you're okay with said risk. I know I'm being very serious and unfun, and crypto and NFTs are supposed to be fun and JPEGs and shit posting. But I mean, I know we're just talking about damn JPEGs on the internet, but I'm genuinely trying to give good information. Two more things that I want to talk about as well. Number one is foxes. I'm talking about Famous Fox Federation. Recently, the project has been a subject of attention as it relates to revenue sharing. If you don't know, Famous Fox has recently released a similar game to Degen Coin Flip. And if you don't know what Degen Coin Flip is, it's basically a coin flip game where you bet some soul, you call heads or tails, and if you get it right, you double your bet. It's on chain. Technically, it's not pure 50-50. Because the house needs an edge for this to be profitable. Now, Degen Coin Flip has revenue share, and it has arguably been one of the best revenue share projects in Solana. Now, Fox's version does not have revenue share, and some people complain that all of the utility that Foxes provide never benefit its holders. Personally, I don't think that's true, but there is something to be discussed as it relates to: should an NFT project focus on providing value to its holders, or should it focus on building and innovating? I don't think those two have to be mutually exclusive, but an important question is it legal to do so, right? Looking at DJing Coin Flip and using the Howie Test on it, it's probably a security, straight up. Just let's get that out of the way. Foxes lives in a little bit more of a gray area, right? It doesn't share the revenue. However, the fact that they do have staking and a token definitely puts it in kind of a gray area there for me. But going back to who is right or wrong on the Foxes and revenue sharing debate, I think if Foxes don't want to do revenue sharing, that is fine. It's completely up to the team. It looked like those most vocal about the situation were not even core Foxes community themselves. They could be holding Foxes, but they certainly weren't using them as PFPs. And arguments for revenue sharing seemed very focused on how it would reward investors, boost confidence, and floor price. So it seemed a little short-sighted to me, and to me it's a little bit false that all the stuff that they've built over time did not have an effect on the value of Foxes. If you look at the prices of Foxes over time, it's had very healthy action in my opinion. I know in crypto we're all looking for 100x's that stay 100x's, but as of the recording of this episode, the floor hovers around 30 sol. I remember vividly when Foxes were just hanging around 3 to 5 sol for a long time. I guess the other question is, should utilities be token gated? I think it truly depends on the utility itself. If it is something that is truly unique and cannot be commoditized or replicated easily, then yeah, token gate that shit. If, however, it is something that can be copied very easily, then it doesn't make as much sense. So here's two examples, right? Example for something that can be replicated: the coin flip game. Foxes just did that, right? I'm sure there's going to be other copies as well. Example for something that cannot be easily replicated: something like a super advanced trading bot or MEV arbitrage bot or something like that. Yeah, token gate that. Yeah, that's all I had for Foxes. I think if they want to do revenue sharing, great. If they don't want to, also great. I think overall the community that they have is very strong. One of the strongest probably. And if it were the core community members that were complaining, then there might be something there to discuss. Okay, the next topic that I wanted to talk about was Pitt the Panda, who leads the Degenerate Trash Panda project and Rain Protocol, and works closely with Metaplex, wink wink. He recently wrote a tweet thread that I kind of wanted to break it down. I'm going to read the whole quote because I don't want to take anything out of context. So I'm going to read the whole quote. This might be a little long, so bear with me. These aren't my words. This is Pitt the Panda's words, okay? Quote: "The major problem with the NFT company model today is that we as owners are expected by a subset of our holders to continuously provide a population of people who will pay a higher price for those NFTs than those holders themselves paid. This is called the greater fool theory and is basically just a Ponzi scheme. All NFT companies that operate seeking to increase the value of their NFTs are essentially Ponzi schemes. Reminds me almost like an MLM with the way you all push your own NFTs on Twitter. The only time this isn't true is when the NFT yields some value commensurate with its price to the holder, utility. The problem is, it's very tough to do something like this through any legal mechanism. For instance, staking for tokens doesn't pass the Howie Test and is illegal, makes it a security. Having it serve as a discount to things is nice, at Famous Fox Fed, and I think is pretty legal. And token gating to community can work too. at Exiled Apes. But then one has to ask, do these services such as token gated software or community really justify a multi-$1,000 price tag? I mean, hell, there are some monkeys that retail for tens of thousands. I don't think there is any utility on earth that qualifies for that price. So then what holds up the price? You could say it's because there is at least one greater fool willing to pay it. Or you could say it's because the art is great. I think you know where I land. I love NFTs. I love the community they generate, the opportunities they offer us, and the cool stuff they can do. But I think the idea of NFT holders seeing themselves as investors looking for a flip is a risky choice. Likely, they will lose money. Likewise, I think the idea of NFT company founders having this constant gun to their heads to drive up prices for holders by any means necessary is unhealthy and precludes them from actually exploring real things. Similarly, it pains me when I see people with few dollars scraping those dollars together, thousands upon thousands of them, to buy a single JPEG to join a community. It's absurd. They shouldn't cost that much. Go buy some VT sacks or something. You shouldn't be buying frivolous things like that JPEG unless you've got tens of thousands in disposable income. Likewise, if you're an NFT company and you don't have a cheaper entry point than 10K or something to your community isn't fucking worth it. Sorry. I realize these are rather contentious opinions for an NFT founder and for the Web3 space. But if you think about them, I think you'll find they're perfectly reasonable for anybody who hasn't ever bought an NFT before. And if you want to get these people interested in Web3, you'll need to start building companies that don't operate like fucking MLMs for dudes. And that means stop expecting those companies to operate like MLMs. Whew! What a mouthful. Let me break that down a little bit. So that was Pitt's whole tweet thread. The greater fool theory is when you buy something because you think you can sell it to somebody else at a greater price. It is how MLMs work. It is how pyramid schemes work. It is how a lot of NFT projects work. And sometimes it is actually how even real assets like real estate and stocks work. You may argue that real estate and stocks don't follow the greater fool theory because they are real assets or have underlying businesses and companies. In general, that's true, but prices can be manipulated, and in particularly greedy environments and greedy behaviors, you can create greater fool theory in traditional assets. For example, real estate. In the 2008 recession, many people started becoming house or real estate flippers. Essentially, they would buy a house through a mortgage, and the house would appreciate in value because everything was appreciating in value. Then they take a HELOC or a home equity line of credit, take out the money from that house, buy another house with that as down payment until it appreciated more in value, and rinse and repeat. The reason this worked was because housing prices kept going up. Everything was going up. It was incredibly profitable to be a JPEG flipper. Sorry, I meant house flipper. Wink. And you can see the parallels. You would take all these mortgages, which acted as margin or leverage, to further increase your gains. Now that sounds like a lot like cryptos and NFTs before the blow up. Looking at you, 3AC. People will call everything that requires somebody else buying at continuously higher prices a Ponzi. And the question is, when does it stop being a Ponzi? In the monologue above, Pitt is saying it stops being a Ponzi when there is some value or real utility commensurate to its price. And that's true. When a project has actual real goods, services, or utility, then we can start to value the NFT with more sane methods. Now, that being said, like Pitt said, this type of thing is incredibly hard to find because they are oftentimes not legal, because it would more than likely flag them as a security. This is absolutely true. That being said, I believe market force and supply and demand are what dictate price. It's a free market. People can price things however they want. It does become tiresome for project founders to constantly be asked about floor price, value for holders, and how we can raise floor price so others buy our bags first. It is toxic. It is actually toxic. But unfortunately, it has become the ruler for how people in crypto measure the worth and execution of your project. I'm talking about floor price. I personally don't see anything wrong with high-priced NFTs. They are collectibles, just like Pokemon cards or Rolex watches, and can be status symbols. So their value is clout. Their value is derived through clout, scarcity, and demand. I don't fight price, but I will say that depending on the type of community or project that you are trying to create, it may become disadvantageous if prices go too crazy. The point regarding whether or not it's actually worth to buy an NFT for a large price just to join a token gated community depends on the value of said community or brand. Let me give an example. People might walk into a fast food restaurant, see that the price increased by $1 and be like, shit, this is expensive, bro. What happened to the $1 menu? What happened to the $5 footlong, bro? And they'll complain about the price. Same person walks into an Apple store or Louis Vuitton store, be like, shit, gotta get me a new phone, bro. My batteries only last 8 hours instead of 10. Or be like, yo, this bag bussin', about to drop some bands on, get me an LV. No complaints on the price. No complaints. None. The psychology of these things is amazing to look at and research. So yeah, I think it's okay if JPEGs get priced high. That being said, if your project is a game or something and you needed that NFT to play the game, you probably need floor price to be reasonable. Otherwise, people are not going to be able to play your game. I think this is true of Pitt and possibly Raindrops Protocol. So yeah, and stuff you can build on top of Raindrops Protocol. I generally agree with what Pitt stated in his tweet thread. That being said, it is very important to value your community and holders and communicate, transparently and often with them. And honestly, the real ones won't care about floor price. And that's why Pitt said a subset of holders. So why am I talking about all this? I have personally been struggling with figuring out innovative things to put on the PopHeadz roadmap. And to be honest, after thinking a long time and talking with legal, I've realized it's quite futile because it's probably illegal. I still think the NAV operating model has a lot of potential, but I will need to put that on pause and probably run it as a separate third-party custody and financial service, which will need proper licenses. And then, maybe PopHeadz will use said service for NAV operating. But fundamentally, it can't be run through the PopHeadz LLC. After discussing a lot of things with the team, we're doubling down on just focusing on branding and art. So the messaging going forward is going to be more clear. And what does that mean? The NFT you will possibly be purchasing or choosing to mint is a digital collectible. I'm going to say this now because I know people won't read the terms of service that we will put on the mint page later. Number 1, minting the NFT is not an investment in PopHeadz LLC. I think ever since Constitution DAO, people have been using NFTs as a Kickstarter crowdfunding mechanism or as a way to raise seed money for their startup. Because of that, people are assuming, and rightly so, that the NFT, it's an investment. And maybe some NFT projects market themselves like that, but we will not, especially going forward. Our NFT is the first product that we are selling. It is a digital collectible or good, and you can sell or trade it, and if someone is willing to buy it from you for a higher price, that's great. That's your business. Probably that will turn some people off, but it is what it is. The team still has many conversations and hurdles to get through, and if you're still here and are minting for the art, world building, and creativity the team is putting together for you, you are in the right place, and we hope that we can delight you with our first product drop. I'm not personally giving up on the NAV idea, but it will be on pause. So if you were excited for that, I apologize. I'll try and work it in eventually once I figure out how to do it legally. And that's it for now. Maybe that was entertaining, maybe it wasn't, but I hope it was informative and proves that we are taking things seriously. It may be news you didn't want to hear as well, but it's important nevertheless. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to hit me up in the Discord. Thank you all for listening. I will catch you all next week.